Hello, my name is Rick Houston, and welcome to the Scene Vault Podcast, your source for all things NASCAR history. Presented by QWare. Maintain excellence.
The last thing he wants to do is talk to reporter number one. That's for sure what he don't want to talk to is somebody that's had a couple beers that's mouthy. There is definitely some things I would have done differently as I came up through my life, but I can't go back and fix them. If you got something stupid to tell me, you push that freaking button, and there can't no damn body hear you whine. When I'm done adjusting, I'll answer that question.
The day NASCAR and all of us associated in any way with NASCAR forget its past, that's the day we don't have any future.
Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Wade.
And my name is Rick Houston, and welcome to the Scene Vault Podcast. Steve, I don't know about you, but I have to ask, are you ready for this episode? I've really been wondering what the reaction is going to be because Michael McSwain, if you've listened to the previous two episodes with Michael, you know that he doesn't hold anything back, especially when he feels pretty strongly about something. And this week he shares some stuff that he feels very strongly about. So I've been kind of thinking about what the reaction to this episode is going to be.
Let's just say, listeners, get ready to have your boat rocked.
So we're going to share the interview as is. And all I'd better say right now is that it is as raw and emotional an episode as anything that we've ever done here on the Scene Vault Podcast. And Steve, we've had some pretty, we've had some pretty strong episodes over the years, but this one is pretty raw and it's pretty emotional at times. So,
well, you know, when someone feels very strongly about something, the emotions tend to boil over a little bit. And that's the case here.
This week, in this installment of the interview with Michael, the third and final installment of the interview with Michael, he talks about a little bit of an incident between Ricky Rudd and a Robert Yates Racing employee that left, well, Steve, it left Ricky with a pretty nasty black eye.
I would not call that a little bit of an incident at all.
He also talks about his reasons for leaving Robert Yates Racing to go to work for Joe Gibbs Racing as the crew chief for Bobby Labonte. And finally, Michael rejoined Ricky Rudd at Wood Brothers Racing, where Michael stayed until his decision to get out of the sport in 2007. And Steve, at the end of our conversation, Michael kind of shared some feelings about no longer being involved in the sport, and the conversation did turn pretty personal. I really wondered if I should include everything that we were talking about, but as I mentioned earlier, I went ahead and left it as is.
Well, I'll tell you, Rick, part of this podcast, of course, is to bring the history of racing and NASCAR back to life. But the other part is to let our guests speak their minds, speak their feelings. Don't hold anything back, because that's what the listeners want. But it also, I think, is something of a tonic for our guests to be able to speak freely. I like that.
Steve, then in our second segment, we're going to go back to the April 27th, 2000 issue of Winston Cup Scene. And this issue featured a big package of stories on several up-and-coming crew chiefs at the time, with Michael McSwain right there on the cover. And it was just a couple of episodes ago where I talked about Mark Martin's dominance in the Busch Series in 1997. Well, this is year 2000, and this issue has a feature that I did on Mark Martin's dominance in the Busch Series in the year 2000.
Things sometimes don't change, do they?
And Steve, this week we have new Patreon support from Christopher Miller, increased support from Craig Dedman, and PayPal help from Bill Stripling and Paul Friedrich of Bowmansville, New York. And Steve, Paul, I don't know about beer rebates or anything like that, but evidently he had sent in his beer rebate and got $11, and he passed it on to us.
Well, I'll tell you what, a man that'll give you his beer rebate is a true gentleman. That's a sacrifice right there.
Well, Paul sent it along to us. He got $5 for a Sam Adams and $6 for a Miller Lite. And he said that we should make it a challenge. He said we should try to have everybody send us their beer rebates, and then we would be in business.
I think he's 100% right. Hey, folks, pay attention. Beer rebates. We need it.
Steve, I want to know something. Would you be willing to send in your beer rebate?
No.
I would be headed straight to the nearest Cadillac dealership. I wonder if I could get any rebates on my Diet Pepsi.
That would be a fortune.
So, Paul, thank you. And if you're out there and you want to send in your beer rebate, absolutely, we would be glad to have it. So if you can, support us on Patreon, support us on PayPal, send us your beer rebates. On Patreon, that address is patreon.com. That's patreon.com/The Scene Vault Podcast. Or if you would prefer just to do a one-time show of support, you could do that at paypal.me/The Scene Vault Podcast. I kind of hesitate to ask this next question, but I'm going to ask it anyway and risk the wrath. But Richmond was exciting in 2001, but then Richmond again the next year was exciting, but probably not the way that you might have liked after Ricky and one of your crew guys got into some kind of dispute. I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. What happened?
I was witness to none of it. Obviously, I was in on the meetings post.
Yeah.
But it was when you're racing, you're always trying things. You're trying to get better. And let's see, where did Richmond fall?
It was in September.
Okay, so that was September of 2002.
2002, yes, sir.
So it was near the end, as I call it. So I think I had already told Robert. I don't know if I told Robert I was leaving yet or not, but there was tensions with Ricky and Robert on their negotiations to extend the contracts, and I'm not trying to make anybody look bad, but Ricky always had these theories that someone was against him, out to get him. That type of mentality, you know, everybody's different, and so he was convinced prior to that we weren't getting as good of motors, and 88 was getting better stuff and more durable stuff. He was convinced in 01, let's see, 02. He was convinced at 01 that we got an experimental motor at Martinsville. That's why it blew up. And that's when we lost. We were second to points. That's when we lost our shot at championship because we blew a motor and fell out early. And Gordon finished. All he had to do was finish in.
Yeah.
And we lost our shot at points. But he couldn't get that out of his mind. And so one of the things you learn as a crew chief that you didn't know when you first went in this business was it's a lot mental from a driver. A driver has to believe in his car, believe in his crew, believe in the motor. And when he gets all that, then he'll be good. The good ones. Ricky was that way. Even Morgan was that way. I even seen touches of it with Rich Bickle and everybody. But when Ricky got out of that mentality, he was the Ricky that everybody said he was. When he believed in everything, he was the Ricky I knew he was. And he had got back to the Ricky that other people said he was. And so he was complaining about the motor on the radio throughout the race. Well, then this guy. So when he gets out of the car, it's hot. he's sweating. The last thing he wants to do is talk to reporter number one. That's for sure what he don't want to talk to is somebody that's had a couple beers that's mouthy, right? And so this guy who worked in the motor shop met him as Ricky was going back to the hauler and basically started an argument. But it should have never happened,
Right,
you know.
right.
You know.
You mentioned the fact that you had already talked to Robert. You might have already
not
talked
sure.
to Robert
Yeah.
about going over to Gibbs or whatever, but evidently you signed an extension with Robert, and evidently you were going to go work with Elliott Sadler 2003, but then all of a sudden at the end of the season you're at Joe Gibbs Racing.
So I had to sign an extension with Robert
Yeah.
and Ricky.
Right.
I'll emphasize that. Okay.
Okay. All right.
I didn't know Elliot.
Right.
I didn't know nothing about him. I mean, I'd seen him in the garage and all that like that, and then I had a couple beers with him trying to get to know him or whatever. But I didn't know what his skills were. But at the same time, I got contacted from Gibbs, from some of his people. And like I told you before, I had created a pathway, and I was moving, and I was trying to improve all the way. Well, to start with, I wasn't sure we were going to improve at Yates. I didn't know if we were going to get better or worse, but I wasn't sure we were going to get better. I want to win a championship. I want to be a part of a championship team. So, and it actually happened before the end of the season. But I was a poor old country boy from Lattimore, North Carolina. Let's remember that. And they talked to me about some things that I would have never dreamed could
Joe
have
Gibbs.
happened. Joe Gibbs' group.
Okay. Right.
And it just, I mean, I was like, whoa. You know, I knew there was opportunity to win a championship. They had won one a couple years before. They obviously had the pieces, the finances. And so, you know, I got to get out of my contract. And they said, well, we'll take care of that. Whatever it costs, we'll handle it. We need you. And so, when I approached Robert about it, it probably didn't go that good. You know, I mean, we weren't going to fight or nothing like that, but it was hard. It'd be like telling your dad, you know, that, because I had more respect for Robert probably than anybody I ever worked for. It'd be like telling your dad, you know how, or if you go tell your dad something that you know he's going to be disappointed in, but you got to go tell him. And that's kind of how that meeting was. I felt like I knew in my heart it was the right move. I also knew that Robert was going to be mad. And Robert didn't get mad like throwing stuff, fighting. So it made you feel disappointed. And you knew, I'm like, Robert's going to be disappointed, man. He's going to be pissed. And so I had a couple meetings with him, and I don't have anything against Elliot, but I just didn't think it was the right move for me. And he got mad at me. I don't know that he's ever talked to me since, Elliot Sadler.
Yeah.
But he had some semi-success at Yates, but I just didn't think it was my deal, what I needed to do. So me and Robert started talking or whatever, and then Zippy says, well, if they tell you to leave, come on and go to work, and you can help me try to finish winning this championship, right? And so I'm like, what do you mean? He said, just wait and see what happens. So that was on a Monday when I had a meeting with Robert. And I think on Wednesday, he said, we're going to go in a different direction. We don't need you to go to whatever the next race was. Wow. And so I went with Gibbs now. And I went over there and I started hung out with Bobby and Jimmy. And during that time, we were doing some, we would do testing during the race on things like air pressure and stuff like that would help the 20 because they were trying to win a championship. I think they were going against Mark, actually. Anyway, so I was working with the 18 and the 20. I was assigned to the 18. I was assigned to the 20. But I was working on the 18 to help the 20. So this was my first real experience at teammates. Same building, same cars. We're on the radio together. We're talking to each other. We're helping each other. And, we would learn some stuff on tire pressure, and we'd go down and tell them, and then all of a sudden they'd get better, and we helped them. And they were great. Don't get me wrong. I didn't go over there and help them win a championship, but I was a part of it, and I got to be a part of it, so that's my only, part of being on a championship team was that, but I felt like I was part of it. So, and then we started doing some testing with the 18, but it was cool, man, to be in an organization like that and see how it was really supposed to work. At Yates, it was teams, but they worked individually, and over there it was teams that worked as a team. But it was interesting, to say the least.
You had a pretty good year with Bobby in 2003. I think you got a couple of wins.
Yep.
Were you satisfied at that point?
I felt like for a first year, we won Atlanta. We sat on the pole at Texas. I don't know, I might have had another pole or two. I don't remember. I learned some things about Bobby. We had a shot to win a few races, finishing second or third. And then, this is my mark on time, we won the last ever Winston Cup race at Homestead.
Okay, yeah.
Bill led most of the race, and we were in second or third most of the race, and then he had a flat coming off of 2. Bobby had just said the lap before, I ain't never going to catch him. He's playing with us. And I said, hammer down, man. You don't know what's going to happen. And by that time, he had a flat. And we drove around and won. So I was part of winning the last ever Winston Cup race. So we had a pretty good year. I don't know where we finished in points, but it was a good season. And then we started the next season with high hopes, obviously.
You're going to make me ask, aren't you? 2004, whatever happens. And when you and I first started texting back and forth and sending messages back and forth, one of the first things that you said was, I'll tell you what happened at Gibbs. I'll tell you the real story of what happened. All right? So it's go time. What happened?
So, as we discussed in the prior hour and whatever we've been talking, most of my life I have not been what you'd say politically correct. Yeah. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. It is what it is. I'm like everybody else who's 50 years old. There is definitely some things I would have done differently as I came up through my life, but I can't go back and fix them. I can just try to be better forward. But my whole life, from the time I was, when did I win that? 6th grade, we won the Pee Wee football championship in overtime. We beat the team we'd never beat our whole life. From that point forward, I had won at everything I had done somehow. Figured out a way to win. If we was hurt, we played. We figured out a way to win racing. We figured out a way to win in football. We figured out a way to win in wrestling. Whatever I did, I tried to figure out a way to win. And I thought that when you raced to win. That's what you did. No matter what you had to do to get there, you raced to win. And it was that way at Roberts. We did what we had to do to win. I told you earlier, we cut a whole body off the day before. When I first went to Gibbs, I thought it would be the same way. Joe being from the football world, the success they had had. Zippy seemed to be that way. But what I learned when I was there that second year also changed me as a person, because I learned that it wasn't just about racing. In the blink of an eye, I learned it wasn't just about racing. It was about being politically correct and racing. And the politically correct was sometimes before the racing. And me, I had always been whatever I had to do to win a race or have a chance to win the race is what I did. Well, that was the first year of the new point system. I think you can look, I think we were fifth or something when I left. But we had run good all year. We sat on a pole again at Texas. And we'd had some top fives and top tens, and we'd ran fairly successful. But we hadn't won. And I was pushing, and I was pushing hard. And I was pushing the guys hard. And we had a little guy who worked on our team, a little weasel of a guy, who come to find out was he was Bobby's little guy. He was doing some things behind my back for Bobby and telling Bobby some things behind my back that Bobby didn't necessarily need to know. Because sometimes you do things on cars that might be a little discretionary that the whole world don't need to know. And the drivers talk a lot, so we don't always tell them when we're doing some things, not unsafe, but maybe on the gray area with NASCAR. So this guy, we caught this guy doing this, me and my crew. And so we had a little situation at Pocono and involved this kid, and I basically I wanted him fired because I didn't trust him. He was detrimental to the team. Well, Bobby didn't want no part of it, and this went on for a couple of weeks, and then our tensions grew stronger and stronger between me and Bobby, and I don't remember what race it was, but we finished second again. And then me and Bobby and Jimmy, we met, and Bobby was like, we ain't winning a race, And then I'm like, well, you don't have to finish second all the time, Bobby. That somebody just got a bumper on it. You don't have to wreck the guy, but there comes a point where you got to do your part too. I can't build a car that's 2 seconds faster than everybody every week. And at that time, it had already got to the point where everybody's cars were getting closer and closer together, and the templates were getting tighter and tighter, and it was hard to make big advantages, and we started pushing each other, and
You started pushing each other.
just harder and harder,
Are you talking about a confrontation?
No, not physically,
okay,
not physically,
all right.
but basically, he ain't doing his job, and he ain't doing his job, and I'm saying he ain't doing his job. He's saying I ain't doing his job, and the tension just got higher and higher and higher. But we were still running in the top tens every week, and like I say, I think we were fifth in points, and there was like 6 or 7 races to go before the cutoff, and so irregardless, we weren't going out and eating dinner and drinking beer. We were doing our jobs. And getting it done. So we finished we went somewhere. I don't remember what my last race was, but we went somewhere, and Bobby just destroyed the pit crew on the radio that Sunday. Just obliterated them. And I've already told you one time about my guys. I mean, just, y'all suck. I can't believe we can't get in and out of here, and just abused them. So this was probably my fault, but it was worth every damn penny of it.
That's not somebody losing his job is not funny, but
I didn't care at that point. I was way over it.
Yeah.
So I don't remember the race. So we got ready to go to the next race, and anytime we had a new car or something like that, he would come in the shop and check the seat and fit the seat or whatever. So I actually learned this from Harry Hyde. So he was dead and gone then, but it was his fault. He got in the car, put the steering wheel on, and he checked the belts and everything, got everything fixed. And the guy who was doing the setup, I think it was Scotty Zipadelli. He said, "Hey, come here, Bobby wants to talk to you." Oh, this will be freaking great. So I go over there and I walk the setup plate and I said, "Yeah, what's up?" He said, "There's 2 push-to-talk buttons on the steering wheel." I said, "Yeah." He says, "Want a backup or whatever?" I said, "Well, that one there, that's the one that's always there. It's one that's been there forever. You use it, talk on the radio." I said, "So if you got anything important to tell me about the car, something about the air pressure, what the tires are doing, any adjustment we need to make, you push that button and tell me, just like you always have." He said, "Cool." He said, "What's that button for?" I said, "If you got something stupid to tell me, like the pit crew sucks, or you're whining about something, you push that freaking button, and there can't no damn body hear you whine." And I turned around and went to my office. Needless to say, that didn't do a whole lot for their tensions, but it sure made me feel better. So I don't think we did too good that weekend. I don't know, but we didn't win. And that little kid was up to his, and I made him go sit in the truck. The kid who was sneaking around talking crap. And I said, "You just sit in the truck." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Sit in the truck all weekend. Don't even come out. You can go. I don't care where you go. Just don't be in this garage there." And it just went on and on. And that Monday, Jimmy said, nobody knows this, but, and JD's dead and gone. He's the only one I told I wouldn't tell. So he said, "Let's meet up in Joe's office." Joe wasn't there. Joe was playing football. And I still say to this day, if Joe would have been there, I'd have never left. I'd have been there till I quit racing. So went up in Joe's office, had a big round table, and JD was on one side, and Jimmy was over here, and I was over here, and Bobby wasn't there. He didn't have the guts. And Jimmy said, "Well, Bobby don't work with you no more." I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "Well, he doesn't want to work with you anymore." I said, "So, this was my moment in time I was telling you about earlier." I said, "So you're telling me that we're 5th in points, and the reset's coming in like 6 races, and all we got to do is be above 12th, and we got a shot to win the Winston Cup Championship. Nextel Cup Championship." I said, "And we're going to throw all that away because Bobby got his damn feelings hurt." And JD said, threw his hands up and said, "Well, he don't want to work with you anymore." And I said, "Well, you can tell him to kiss my ass, and y'all figure out how you're going to pay the rest of my contract. I'm going to the house." And that's what I did. And that was the end of it. And they missed. You had to finish 12th.
Yeah.
And they missed the cutoff and didn't make it to the points. And it proved to me that we couldn't be professional and do our job. It's about somebody getting their feelings hurt. And it was all about that little kid. He was one of Bobby's little boys. Not really. but not.
Yeah, I understand.
And he got his feelings hurt over that, and he let that situation destroy our relationship and expose us. And, you know, when we're in public, he pretends like there's no issues or whatever, but he didn't invite me to the Hall of Fame. And he got his last 2 wins with me.
Did he?
He didn't win again after he won Atlanta, and he won Homestead. He never won another race.
Wow.
But he didn't invite me to the Hall of Fame. Now, Gibbs invited me to their party, but he didn't invite me. But that's all right. I didn't do it for him.
So that happened, and I guess there was maybe a month or so between that and your next gig or whatever. Was there ever a point where you considered walking away and saying, you know what, I'm done with this. I don't need this.
I didn't really know what I wanted to do.
Okay.
So it was kind of the, funny enough, it was kind of the Days of Thunder story. I live about 5-8 miles from here. And one of the guys that worked for me at the time, his mom was worked at a rental place, and I had rented me a bulldozer, and I was clearing this property and digging up stumps and smoothing it out, making pasture and stuff like that. And I was doing interviews from the bulldozer and that whole week. And Eddie Wood and Lynn Wood drives up on my property out in the middle of the pasture where I was digging on that bulldozer. And I thought, I knew who was driving there was Rudd. And so they wanted to talk. So, you know, I told them the same thing. I said, you know, I don't know what I want to do. And the first thing is me and Ricky got to talk, because that thing didn't end real well, and I need to make sure that we're on the same page if we're going to do this thing again. And I went into Ricky's office, and we sat down and had lunch and BS for a little while. And figured we'd give it another shot. And so we did.
You ran the full season in 2005 with Ricky and the Wood brothers, but then he retired for the first time. And
broke my heart.
Did it really?
Well, I mean, that's why I went there.
Yeah.
So here we are again. Driver of the week or whatever. Whoever's coming next, I don't know. You know, it just... it's just so important that you have a good driver. I feel sure most everybody up there, back then, most everybody there was a good driver, but not most all of them could communicate what they needed. And that was the difference. You know what I'm saying? And he was one of them who could communicate. And Bobby was too. When Bobby was in his racing mind and nothing else was involved, he was the same way. He was one of the greatest drivers I ever worked with. Can't take it away from him. Atlanta, places like that, Texas, he could do things with a race car most people can't. When he wasn't there, he was average at best. And Ricky was the same way. And so I knew, here we go. I'm not taking nothing away from the guys I worked with afterwards. I just knew where they were in their careers. And I just knew, this is going to suck, man. And so here's a back behind the scenes story is so I learned at Gibbs that it wasn't all about racing. So it changed my mentality a little bit, my approach. I went more business because I saw that's what it was. So I had a meeting with, we'll call it a meeting with, this is a breaking news.
Yeah.
With Richard Childers and Jeff Burton at Richard Childers' office at the winery. And I had all intentions of going to work there after I found out Ricky was leaving. And I went back to the shop. Wood Brothers was at
Tabby Schecter's.
not yet.
I wasn't. Okay.
We were in Rudd's building.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Robert's building across from the motor shop,
Okay.
which was Rudd's building, which was Yates' building. La da da.
Yeah.
And I went back and I told Eddie Wood, I stand outside the building, and I said, well, Ricky's leaving. I'm out. I don't want to do a rebuild. I don't have the heart to rebuild again. I want to win. And I knew that Burton was going to be a lot like Rudd and Bobby, where he was on the tail end, but he wasn't done yet. And I felt like it would be the same situation where I could go and we could win 2 or 3 races if I could figure out what he needed. And so I was like, I got me another shot here. So this, and what I'm going to tell you is the only time in my career I ever did it. So Eddie came back to me with Tad and said, and made me an offer I couldn't refuse, really. And the moral of that story is that's the only time in my career I ever took a job for the money instead of the performance. I didn't really care about the money. Every other job I ever had, I did it because I knew I could win and had a better shot at winning.
Did you have the gig with RCR and Burton?
All I had, yeah, I told him I hadn't signed any paper.
Right.
But I had said, yeah, I'll do it. Let me go see if I can clean things up with Eddie.
Okay.
Because my contract with Eddie said that I had to be involved with selecting the driver. Because I knew I didn't know what was going to happen, but I was afraid what was going to happen. So I had to have some input with it.
Yeah.
And so there was some fine lines there that I probably was going to be able to get out of the contract.
Right.
I had a year to go on it. And he, I ain't going to let you out. I said, I don't think you got any choice, Ricky, Eddie. And this went on and on. But anyway, they came back to me, him and Tad, and offered me a new contract with a lot of money to basically oversee all of Tad's stuff and the Wood Brothers stuff to stay.
Yeah.
So I kind of fell into that general manager / crew chief / whatever you want to call it role. And I made a lot of money. And it's the worst decision I ever made my whole career, bar none. Not going to work for the Wood Brothers. The year before that was great. Being involved with being a general manager and being involved with Tag and Schechter. That was absolutely the worst decision I made in my entire career.
Why is that?
Just the way some things unfolded. The way it, and as you can see, the Wood Brothers is not with them anymore because it all ended up clarifying itself. But I don't know. We talked about it earlier. It's just what racing's like now and what it was like then. It's just dirty now. Racing's dirty, and people's in it for themselves and making money, and it ain't about racing. It's about the show. And it was always about the show a little bit, but we was racing too,
At what point did you start thinking about walking away? Because I remember you and I talking, I want to say it was at Bristol. And you and I talked in the hauler, and you said that you were thinking about walking away, that you were more than likely going to be walking away to concentrate on your family, basically.
So my wife had our first child, my daughter, and she was pregnant with our second. And some things had happened with the race team. And I asked them to, I had a contract through 2010. And so I had them our agreement to make everybody happy is it would end at the end of that year, 06.
Yeah.
So that we didn't get into a big nasty argument. So I had been through what I went through at Gibbs, and I had been what I went through with Tad, and I saw the side of the industry I didn't like. My second child was being born. The racing I was looking for wasn't there anymore. I had just had enough. I probably should have stayed a few more years, but the industry was changing really fast at that point in 06, 07. That's when it really.
Yeah.
Earnhardt was gone. The leadership in NASCAR was Helton was still there, but everything else was spinning and changing, and they didn't know what direction they were going in, and Brian for sure didn't know what direction he was going in, and I knew what was going to happen with Tad and the Wood brothers. It was a chore to go to work every day, and I wasn't racing. I was businessing, for lack of a better term, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know the next step, and so I felt like I prayed a lot and cried a lot and didn't know what to do. So what I was looking for was gone, and so I just thought it was the right time.
Once you got out of the sport, how big of an adjustment was it for you personally? Deep down inside, how much of an adjustment was it for you personally? Because I know what it was like for me when I got out of the sport, and it was tough.
When I'm done adjusting, I'll answer that question.
Okay.
Because I ain't yet. Me and my wife, we started over. At the time, we had been married for, so that was 06, so we had been married for 7 years. We were together 5 prior to getting married. Yeah. We started all the way over. Because she'd been running the house while I was gone.
Right, yeah.
And I've been out making money, and I've been running everything where I was. And so we had to refine our boundaries. Personally, I've been lost ever since. I would trade nothing for. I might have missed one baseball game. My son started playing when he was 5. He's 13. I probably only missed one soccer game. My other son, he started when he was 5 and he's 11. My daughter, I'm almost every gymnastics competition. I didn't miss any of that stuff. I got to see her win for the first time. Got to see my son's home run first time. My other son's goal. You couldn't give me a bag of money to trade that out of me. There's no price. And a lot of those guys never saw that. Jimmy Finning, he's one of the guys that helped coach me through that time when I was struggling. And he missed a lot of his kids, and he kept telling me over and over, don't miss it. And but that's who I am. I'm a dad first, and a husband, and a Christian. But that's what I did. This other stuff, I'm just doing it so I can be with my kids. That is still what I do. I probably never get to do it again. But I've never found peace since I walked away.
I'm going to tell you a story.
All right.
And I don't know that this will be on the show or whatever. This is Rick and Mike talking. I struggled big time. I mean, I went to work for NASCAR. I was going to be the PR person for the Busch Series, and they doubled my salary. And I was never comfortable in that position. My first reaction when I was let go was to thank the guy.
Yeah.
And I struggled. And I thought I was the most important person in the Busch Series. I thought the Busch Series revolved around me. And they raced the next weekend. And that was a shock. I'm ashamed to tell you how big a shock that was.
No, you shouldn't be.
I taught high school for a year and a half. So I went from going to Daytona for a week to coming up with lesson plans for 10th grade English. It took me about 2 weeks to figure out that I really missed journalism. And I had a chance to go back to work for NASCAR. I had a chance to get back into the sport. I think actually when you and I got back in touch, probably 2006, 2007, 8, somewhere in there. And I was doing a lot of freelance for NASCAR.com, and they had a gig come up full time. I'd be back on the road doing what I'd been doing and everything, and it went to somebody else. And I'll tell you when we stopped recording how it went down, but I got so frustrated after that happened. And there I was. I had traveled the circuit. I had literally traveled the world. I'd gone to the first exhibition race in Japan. And there I was, basically without a job. I taught 3 semesters and figured I'd better get out before I dropped dead of a heart attack. And so I went full-time freelance in June of 2006. And 2007, 8, somewhere in there is when I was doing a lot of stuff for NASCAR.com. And the full-time gig that I had chased went to somebody else. And Michael, I got so frustrated that I made the mistake of saying in front of my wife and kids, I said, I used to be somebody. And that was deep. That came from a deep, dark place. And one of my wife and I have twin boys, and they were, that was 07, 08. They were 7, they were 6 or 7. So they were still pretty young. But one of those boys heard me say that at 6 or 7. And he crawled up in my lap and he hugged me tight. Now, I'm not talking about a one-arm man hug. I'm talking about he hugged my neck. And he looked at me and he said, "You are somebody. You're my daddy."
That's pretty good, ain't it?
And it was just like that my entire perspective changed. And in that moment, it became okay for me not to work for Winston Cup Scene. It became okay for me not to work in NASCAR anymore. In that moment, that's when I became Adam and Jesse's daddy. And I became Jeannie's husband. And it was a long time before I ever even thought about NASCAR again.
See, that's why I don't race. I don't go to race.
Yeah.
I do very little of this.
I got an email, I got a Facebook message from a publisher who was starting a series of books about NASCAR. And he wanted to know if I would be interested in writing a book about the 1992 Daytona, or 1992 Hooters 500. And I wrote that book, and it got me involved in the sport again, but not full time. I wasn't going to the races. I think I went to Charlotte and stuck around for maybe a couple of days just trying to line up interviews and everything. That led to another book. That led to me talking to Steve about, doing the scene vault and preserving all the papers and getting them scanned and making them available online and all that. that led to me doing this podcast. And doing this podcast and doing the same vault thing, that led to the commemorative issue at Darlington. And Darlington, when I went to the race track that weekend, that was the first time that I had been to a race track in. This is the first time I'd been to a race. I stayed for the Xfinity race and watched it from the press box, and that was the first time I had been actually seen a race since 2008. And I don't know what I would have done if Adam hadn't crawled up in my lap and said that. I mean, that was.
I think especially for me, when I say that that's what I am, what I mean by that is I'm a competitor.
Yeah.
And I don't think the world I competed in I don't think it ever exists again. But I'm like you said, man, I'm a pitcher and a goalie and a car driver and buying a baseball bat, and I take my youngest to school every day. That's what I do now.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade it. There's no way